martial energy. Let go of the ties to this life and move on to the next. Spirit, stay back.
What are you all doing here sitting in the dark?
So we are talking about the 2016 movie, The Unbidden, directed by Quentin Lee. Now this isn't really a horror film, although it is kind of packaged like this. There is a supernatural element with this film, but it's fairly minimal, and is actually more of a kind of drama, thriller, soap opera type movie. So basically the story here focuses on 4 middle-aged women, and they basically have a kind of a secret that they've all been keeping for the last kind of like 20 years or so. And one of them isn't sort of dealing with it particularly well, and she's kind of having a bit of trouble. So her friends have come round, and they decide to do some kind of like a seance, so to speak, to try and put to bed some of the kind of the issues from the past. Then all of a sudden, an unexpected guest turns up, and not only that, supernatural stuff starts to happen, and things from the past start to unravel. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say on the plot here. Let's talk about what is good and what is bad about The Unbidden. So we'll talk about the positives first of all. I think it's nice to see a film where the cast is kind of middle-aged women, basically, and they're actually all American Asian as well. So it's quite nice. It just happens to be that that's their ethnicity. It doesn't really make any effect to the story, but it's just kind of quite cool. Just where you're kind of getting a little slice of life, rather than having the kind of the kind of standard, typically diverse lineup that you kind of get in a lot of movies. So I kind of quite like that. They just happen to be middle-aged women, all of which are, of Asian descent, and this story involves them. Great. I also quite like the fact that the characterization of these 4 women are all very kind of well defined as well. We get to know these 4 women, each of which have got a very kind of distinct sort of style of personality. And I felt in the movie did a good job of kind of differentiating these type of women and how they can still all be friends but all be quite different. So in that respect, I also quite liked it. And there is just a couple of, there's not a lot of supernatural stuff in it, but there's some reasonable makeup effects on some of the kind of the ghostly images that we see here. But let's talk about the negatives first of all. By far the biggest one is the kind of the tone of this film. Sadly, it plays like a soap opera rather than a kind of a horror film, certainly, but even a kind of a thriller. There is a kind of, a little twist in it, which obviously I won't spoil, but I kind of liked. But it's so melodramatic, so soapy, and you can just, this plot, you can just imagine being taken out of a kind of a long-running soap opera, and then they're just kind of condensed down into a film and plonked on this movie. And that's pretty much it. You'll know exactly what I mean if you see it. But it also, in regards to that, I feel this movie just wasn't very interesting. It all, near enough, all takes place in one house, so the settings aren't particularly interesting. About a third of the film takes place in flashback, and I'll come on to that again in just a minute. But this story just isn't very exciting. Basically, it's quite slow. It doesn't have that kind of that build up that you kind of maybe want from a slow burn film. It's just kind of a little dull, unfortunately. Now, I've mentioned obviously that this film, a lot of it takes place in flashback. We have 4 younger actors who are basically playing the same roles, but kind of 20 years or so years in the past. I've got to say, I thought the casting was a little bit off here. I don't feel, at least some of the actresses are very representative of the older actresses, if that makes sense. They really don't look anything like each other, maybe with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 of them, but I felt the acting as well wasn't particularly fantastic throughout the film. But just the pacing of this film is kind of a little slow. And there's something that happens, there's an additional character that turns up, and you think, oh man, that just feels so unnatural and so kind of convoluted that this kind of character happens to kind of turn up there, and man, it just feels, that to me was just like, oh, you're kind of almost jumping the shark, so to speak, if to take a TV phrase there. Overall, whilst I don't feel this film is, offensively bad in any way, it really doesn't, there's no one thing that I thought, oh, you can kind of watch it for this and that would be kind of quite good, even if the rest of the film is not all that fantastic, you still have that. There's none of that, unfortunately. There's nothing in this film that is, I would say, outstanding in any way, other than maybe the fact that obviously the choice to cast 4 middle-aged women is somewhat, not typical, shall we say. But other than that, really, there's nothing really to kind of recommend this over than a plethora of other kind of like supernatural dramas and thrillers. And it's so unmemorable, basically, you will just forget it pretty much within the first day of seeing it. So overall, I'm going to give this movie a 3.5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.